Hi, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to introduce and spend a little time on configuring the various roles an ISE server can take on. Remember what that's called? Yeah, it's a persona. We'll review the various persona types and introduce you to the bootstrap and configuration process of a simple two-node ISE deployment. Remember the three main node types. The admin node or the PAN, there has to be at least one of these and preferably two in production. Same with the MNT. And the PSNs must be at least one server running the PSN service, preferably more in a real-world deployment. Also remember the deployment types of small, medium, large, and the different characteristics. If you need a review, please see the previous lessons to review that topic. So it's actually pretty easy to configure the nodes for the roles in the deployment. It's basically checkboxes that you enable or disable depending on the type of deployment. To make the node a PAN, obviously the administration role must be enabled. Same for the MNT node. The PSNs, there's an overall policy service that must be enabled, but there are a few sub-roles that must be enabled underneath to finalize the behavior of the server in the environment. There's also a service for pxgrid if we're going to make this a pxgrid node as well. Pretty easy, huh? Now let's look at the different types of services that the policy node can serve up. First one is pretty straightforward. It's the session service. It provides the radius functionality. The second one is the profiling service. This is our ability to profile the devices to understand what type of device is on the network. Third one is our threat-centric service. This enables us to integrate threat information from third-party vendors and make use of that information in our policies. Source Group Tag Exchange Protocol, or SXP for short. This enables the sharing of source group mappings across network devices, and we'll talk a lot more of this in our TrustSec lesson later on. Device Admin. This is our TACACS service, right? If I check this and enable this, I can serve up TACACS requests from this node as well too. Passive Identity basically enables us to get user to IP mappings from just Windows login logoff events. So I can get this passively without actually having authentication or 802.1x configured in the environment. And then finally is the pxgrid service. This again is our context sharing with other Cisco systems as well as third-party systems. Now, we talked about joining an ISE cube. What do I need to join an ISE cube? And we're going to see more of this in the demo, but there's really three basic things you need. You have to have a mutual trust, meaning I have to have the certificate chain of the server that is being joined in trusted by the certificate that is participating in the join. I have to have DNS resolution, so I have to be able to resolve iserver.domain.com. And then I have to have the username and the password, the admin username and password of the remote system. So just to summarize, in a very simple deployment, I must trust the policy admin cert on the secondary nodes, and I have to trust the node I'm adding on the policy node. As you can see in the example below, I have two individual certificates. I have one on the PAN, one on the PSN, but they don't trust each other because they don't know about each other. The example below on the right, where it's checked, I have the PAN and the PSN cert on the one node, and I have the PSN and the PAN cert on the secondary node, so that one will pass. Let's look at a quick bootstrap process. Bootstrapping ISE is pretty straightforward, and we're not going to demo this because it takes a lot of time to actually build the application and the database instances. But it's going to follow the same bootstrap process as most other tools. You'll need basic network information like IP address, mask, gateway, DNS, time servers. And then you'll set up the initial admin password both for CLI and web interface here. So walking through that process, you're going to see that when the server boots up for the first time, it's going to pop up to a login prompt, and we simply just type setup. After that setup, we're basically going to run through the bootstrap process where I give it the IP address and netmask and gateway, the DNS information. This is critical. The server must be resolvable in DNS for a lot of the functions to work. So make sure you're always keeping this in mind when you're setting up your ISE deployment. Time is also very important. Time must be in sync between all the nodes as well as the external identity sources in the environment. So make sure you're using either your enterprise time server or you're using a consistent time server that all the other devices in your infrastructure reference. Turning on SSH, allows us to access the console of the ISE server remotely. This is off by default. I recommend that you turn it on, otherwise you're not going to be able to SSH into the device to do any monitoring, administration, or troubleshooting from that perspective. And then we're going to set up our user ID and our password. This is our password for both the admin portal as well as the CLI. You can change the admin portal password once the system boots up if you need to do so to meet your requirements. Now we're going to review everything that we've just gone over in this last lesson, and we're going to join two servers together to make them an ISE cube. So let's get started with that.
Hi, in this video, we're going to finish building out our ISE cube. We've already done most of the hard work by configuring the certificates in the previous lesson. As we discussed earlier in the session, there are three things that we need in order to build an ISE cube. The first one is mutual trust, which we've already got that. The second one is DNS resolution for your ISE cube's FQDNs, and the third one is the admin user ID and password. Now, I always like to go do a quick check just to make sure that DNS is set up correctly and rule out just the very basics to start with. So I'm going to ping my first server. That resolves. I'm going to ping my second server, and that resolves. So I know I'm good from that perspective. Now, let me go to the administration menu, back to deployment, and let's start building these. Uh-oh, I've got a message here. What does this mean? This node is in standalone mode. To register other nodes, we must first change it to the primary. By default, ISE configures each node as a standalone mode, meaning it's not considered part of any deployment. In order to start an ISE cube, we have to move the node from a standalone node to a primary node. When other nodes are joining the ISE deployment, they do have to be standalone because that's how ISE knows that they aren't part of an existing design and we're not going to mess anything up. So let's quickly change this guy to a primary node. It's very easy. We just edit him. We click this button that says Make Primary. We save, and it'll start saving and do its thing. And we'll be back in just a second when he's ready to go. And we're back. Okay, now his role is primary. He's no longer a standalone node, so we should be ready to start our cube build. As you can see, there's a button up here that says Register. Let's click Register. This is where the DNS resolution comes in. I have to have DNS resolution to the node I'm joining to the cube. There's my fully qualified domain name, my admin user ID, and my password. You click Next. Okay. It went out and it was able to discover the second node, and now it's coming up and asking us what roles do we want to attach to this node. Because he's the second admin node in the deployment, I can choose to make him the secondary admin node or not. Same thing with monitoring. I can choose to enable the policy services node. These are all going to depend on the state of your deployment and what type of node you're adding and its services it's going to provide. For this one, I'm just going to leave everything the default and just click Submit. At that point, he's going to go out and start building the deployment. This is going to take a little bit of time because he's going to do several things. He's going to register the secondary node with the primary. He's going to do a database replication. And he's going to come back up and restart services so that everything is in sync. And we'll be back in just a minute after that's done. In the meantime, I'm going to show you one other thing here from the CLI. I can actually check the status of the ISE services. If I do a show application status ISE, it's going to pop up a list of all the services and their current status. This is a way for me to very quickly see if ISE is initialized or if a part or service on ISE is still starting or down or whatever the status of it is. As you can see, the main one that I want to look at are the database server and the application server. When we're restarting ISE, the application server will restart. This is the one that takes the longest to come up. So if you're concerned that things aren't progressing or the system may be locked up because it's taking too long, don't get worried. It does take quite a bit of time for the services to start, and you can very easily log in over the console via SSH, do a show application status ISE, and see that it's initializing, see if it's running, or what the status of it is. We'll be back in just a minute once the ISE server is finished replicating and everything's good to go, just to make sure that we verify that everything is up and running. And we're back. So as you can see, now the node status is green. I've got two servers in my deployment. I've got LabISE1 and LabISE2. Both of them are running the admin service, the monitoring service, and the policy service. The roles, my first server is primary admin and primary monitoring, and my second ISE server is a secondary admin and secondary monitoring. This node status of green means, yes, I can communicate with that node, and database replication has been completed and is okay. Now, let's see what changes if I actually log in directly to the secondary node. Well, look at that. I have some administrative functions, and that's it. There's no more live logs, there's no more policy options, and a lot of the administrative options are actually gone. That's because now that he's part of a cube, you have to perform all that maintenance from the primary administration node. The only thing you may do from time to time is in a failure scenario, you may have to come in here to the deployment tab and promote him to the primary admin node. This is the manual promotion that we talked about earlier. That wraps up this lesson, and hopefully this gives you an idea of how to create a small basic ISE cube, and you feel confident doing this in your lab or your environment. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.